He knocked me over. I landed on the dog bowl.
This one's wife. Time to shut up, Harry. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As you are aware, Harry appeared in the Court of Appeal to hear his appeal against the decision not to provide him with taxpayer-funded protection as and when he and his family visit the United Kingdom. Many people think this should not be paid for, quite simply because of the behaviour of Harry and this one's wife, the way that they have denigrated the United Kingdom, criticised the royal family, and poured scorn on a nation that initially welcomed this one's wife when she married Harry, and that had always looked fondly on Harry. But recently, that view of Harry has certainly changed. Harry, the Ginger Whinger, is at it again, and as Victoria Ward reports in the Daily Telegraph, the Duke of Sussex believes his police protection was withdrawn in an effort to prevent him and this one's wife from leaving Britain to start a new life. Oh, the self-absorbed self-importance. You withdrew my security to stop me leaving. How does that work? You and your wife decided that you were going because you were told in no uncertain terms by the late Queen Elizabeth II, you're either in or you're out. You can't have half measures. You were given a choice, and you decided to go. You decided to go because your wife got hold of your pink pods and yanked them across the sea. You left the United Kingdom because your wife decided that she didn't want to remain part of the royal family because she hadn't been able to bend the institution to her will. Where other, more accomplished narcissists would bolt on that institution and utilise it for their use, as other narcissists in other royal families have done so, see parts passing, this one's wife wasn't capable of doing that. She sought to change the institution, and the institution was not for changing. That meant it was a huge threat to her need for control. Accordingly, her narcissism, through the third assertion of control, caused her to withdraw. And to do so thinking, we don't need them anyway, I've got what I wanted, a prince and a title and stories to tell. They will welcome me with open arms. In Hollywood, I'll make a fortune from all of that. I'll be on all of the chat shows, and life will be sweet and rosy. And we all know how it's turned out. There was no attempt to keep them because the royal family knew that they didn't want to stay. They were given the choice. But this is the petulance of both Harry and, of course, the arrogance of his wife in stating that they should have their security paid for, even though it's only Harry that has recently ever come to the United Kingdom. My memory serves me correctly, this one's wife, other than a brief appearance in an airport, hasn't stepped foot into the United Kingdom since the death of the Queen in September 2022. Indeed, there are those that suggest that she was actually booted from the United Kingdom as a consequence of her behaviours, in effect banished by the Queen, and, tail between her legs, set off across the Atlantic to Canada and then California. Whichever version it is, whether she was banished with Harry or they were given a choice and they chose to leave, it is pathetic for Harry to now turn around and suggest that the royal police protection was withdrawn in an effort to stop him and this one's wife leaving. It simply doesn't stack up. Speaking to the Telegraph, the Duke described the moment he was told of the decision as difficult to swallow, having previously hinted that it was at the heart of the rift with his father, the King. He suggested he would find it hard to forgive his treatment, adding that his worst fears have been confirmed by secret evidence he had heard in court. Well, I wouldn't necessarily rely upon Harry's interpretation of evidence that he's heard in court as being accurate. After all, this is the man that described himself as the slayer of dragons and became the dragon settler. This is the man that had to have somebody help him cheat in relation to his A-levels. The Duke believes his taxpayer funding security was removed in a failed attempt to force him and this one's wife to stay in Britain after he announced that they were stepping back from public duties and moving to the United States. That just doesn't stack up. She was seen as a troublemaker that had infected Harry also, and that his desires to be more meaningful and that he'd been an agitator were being exacerbated by her presence, and therefore it was a case you can either stay and be working members of the royal family, or you are allowed to go, but you can't monetize your titles, and there's no halfway arrangements. You're either in or you're out. Therefore, with that choice being provided to them, why on earth would they try and keep them when they were viewed as being problematic? Speaking as he left the Royal Courts of Justice following a 2-day appeal hearing, he said, "We were trying to create this happy house. The Duke and Duchess hoped that their own contentment would improve relations with the rest of the family. However, they viewed the removal of their security as a means of trying to force them back into Britain and establishment life by making visits to the UK as outsiders more difficult and potentially unsafe." The Duke subsequently took the unprecedented step of suing the government to get the protection reinstated. In a case of how important he considers the case to be, or rather in a sign of how important he considers the case to be, he suggested it was even more significant than a legal crusade against the tabloid press, which he had previously described as his life's work. Stop being dramatic. It's just a petulant response driven by greed and the fact that he and his wife can't stand to be told this is how it is. Like a pair of teenagers, they rail against it. And he now is whinging, suggesting the real reason that you took away my security was to stop me leaving. It doesn't add up, and it's about time, Harry, that you shut up and grew a pair. We know that your wife keeps them in her handbag. Perhaps you can grow a fresh pair and behave like a man and stop being a petulant man-child that is easily influenced by your narcissist handler. The fact is that what has happened is with this petulant whining that he has exhibited in respect of a situation whereby this one's wife doesn't even want to come to the United Kingdom because her narcissism recognises the massive threat to control that's posed by a population that thinks, why would we welcome you now after the way that you've behaved and the way that you've behaved towards the Queen and Prince Philip? Why would we want you here? That a press that continues to look upon her behaviour unfavourably and comments critically about it, all of this adds up to a huge threat to her control, and her narcissism will keep her in a position of withdrawal to protect her from it. The fact is, banging on about wanting the security is all part about trying to get one over on the royal family and the establishment to get what they want. Because as I've explained previously, even though she might not use it, this one's wife wants the security because it makes her look important. Her behaviour in New York demonstrates that, with the 4-car motorcade, when nobody else ever requires security to the scale that she has had in New York. And Harry, driven by his thick, misguided nature and wanting to appease what his wife demands, embarks on another ill-fated crusade. And not only does it strike me that he may not succeed in law with regard to his application, the fact is that it has generated a massive backlash for him. There are nearly 5,000 comments on this article alone on the Daily Telegraph, probably the most that I've ever seen. And comments range from a load of rubbish, Ginger's delusional, petulant and not very bright, to the Clown Prince of victimhood, to you can take that entitled royal out of the UK, but you can never take the belief in royal entitlement out of the man, to whiny, entitled, arrogant, just the worst of the worst. She's a bit part in a third-rate TV show. Did she get the part in the way that most actresses do? Why is this headline news? So many more real problems that need to be addressed. You chose to leave, Harry. You pay your own way now. No more sponging. So a bitter and twisted millionaire insists that the British taxpayer funds his security. I say no. It's all about me, as usual. Talk about a persecution complex. Could have been his worthy brother's right-hand man, and then no one would have resented his protection costs. Stop giving him publicity. We don't want to know. Even if it wasn't, Harry would choose to believe it was. He's always the victim. Face up to reality, Harry. In terms of the monarch and succession, you are a bit part player. You've done nothing but viciously and publicly attack it for your own delusion and self-interest. What do you expect? Someone else, he's a lost cause, no self-awareness, and always thinks he's the victim. Given that Harry is prone to using emotive language, such as having fled the UK, I find it difficult to take him seriously when he claims that his family tried to trap him. Over and over again, thousands of comments. There's no support or sympathy for him. Many of these people also make the comment or point that they once did like Harry, but they don't any longer as a consequence of the behaviours that they have witnessed. And thus, not only is he making a tit of himself, he's shooting himself in the foot with regard to the affections of people that once supported him. And it really is time that he learned to shut up. But he won't, because he's been encouraged by his narcissist wife to speak up, because she is all about having the right to speak, that we shouldn't be silenced, that she believes that she is always right, and therefore she will utilise Harry also, both in terms of saying things that she once said, for instance, in the way that she influenced him vis-a-vis Spare, but also to encourage him to articulate his own views, and therefore he becomes empowered by his wife and makes a fool of himself, because he is entitled, he is not particularly aware, and he's grown up in a rarefied environment whereby he doesn't recognise particularly well just how privileged he is. It really is time, Harry, that you shut up and live the privacy that you claim that you want. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.